I'm Stephen VanRoekel, the Chief Information Officer of the U.S., coming over from the White House this morning. Kind of a busy day over there, as you can imagine. And I want to thank you all for having me here this morning. I did say I want to thank also the press that have been covering the fact that I'm giving a speech today. You know, there's a lot of news out there that there's just this major administration speech on Tuesday, and I don't know, the state of our tech union is strong, I think is probably the bottom line of this. No, I thought I'd spend some time today talking about our innovation agenda in the administration, kind of set the stage for cloud computing and where we're going from an administration standpoint. To look back in history, this thing is it good to aim somewhere? There we go. Go ahead, click forward. It went backwards. I would love the acronym PICNIC. Do any of you use the acronym PICNIC? It stands for problem in chair, not in computer. I think that's wrong. So to look back in history, you know, the way that federal IT had grown up, and the way that we had deployed IT across the vast landscape that is the federal government was pretty typical. You know, when I was working in the early days of personal computing and looking at server technology starting to come online, kind of the post-mainframe era, we were pretty standard. You know, it was unthinkable in those days to install more than one workload on any given server. You wouldn't put your email server on the same server as a database and same server as your web servers and things like that. You always split the workloads. And what ended up happening was massive monolithic solutions, massive bifurcation in those solutions in a way that just really spread out and grew IT in this crazy way. We also built a culture within government that was really centered around sort of proprietary monolithic solutions that said to do new things, you know, we have to either spend more money, we have to build custom solutions, we need to, you know, take package software or multiple pieces of package software and write integration code between those and kind of bring those all together into some solution, which, you know, became largely unsupportable, unwieldy, and really, really expensive. We were also very, you know, in the growth of IT in the federal government, also very agency-centric. You know, we would design and deploy, even at the bureau level of some departments, technology that was very specific to the solution at hand without really thinking about a few fundamental things. You know, one is, what am I doing across my department to find efficiencies in what I'm doing? And two is, how am I doing this in a way that's very customer-centric? So an American visiting this experience who needs to do some function can do that in a way that is from their perspective, from an outside looking in perspective versus an inside out. We also didn't, you know, as a general rule across the span of history in the federal government, not taking advantage of productivity gains that we really saw in the private sector. Now, I'm still amazed when I walk around, you know, government agencies and other places. When I left, you know, a West Coast high-tech company, on my last day looking in any conference room, you'd see a whole room full of laptops or tablets, people really collaborating online, throwing things up on screens, using those productivity gains that technology has allowed for us. And, you know, in the case of the federal government, you largely see paper and you know, lack of wireless, lack of technology use that's going to take advantage of those productivity gains. So we're really behind the scenes on that. Next slide. You advance. Thank you. So the president coming on board in 2009 changed a lot of this. One is he showed up with a you know, on the heels and with a fire in the belly around the power of technology. You know, a lot of the role of technology and the way technology played a role in the 2008 presidential campaign really inspired a lot of people to think about technology in government and what we could do in a different way. We also found ourselves at this really interesting point in history where technology was kind of answering the call in many ways. The growth of social media, the growth of virtualization, cloud computing, and where that was going. I mean, if we just think 3 or 4 years ago, it was a much different landscape than it is even today. That coupled with fiscal pressure, cybersecurity pressure, and the expectations of citizens growing every day through mobile technology and their online interactions is pushing us into a much different dynamic. And So the president has charged us with really asking ourselves every single day, how are we using technology inside the government to improve the lives of Americans? And, if you heard in his inaugural address, he actually talked about the role of technology in improving government operations, and I think it's still grounded today in sort of the spirit we're doing. Technology, if you sit around government, technology is in everything we do. There's hardly anything going by that we're doing new that doesn't involve technology in some fundamental way. Next slide. So our innovation agenda, this isn't comprehensive across the entire innovation agenda. There's a lot we're doing in the areas of big data and research and STEM education and other things that certainly fold under a 21st century innovation agenda. But the three I thought I'd highlight today is one is just our use of technology and engaging people in how we change things inside government. We're doing a lot to think about how are we taking advantage of productivity gains, how are we taking advantage of cloud computing, virtualization and optimization of our data centers, mobile technology inside government, the power of open data and other things to really do that. And then how are we engaging people in a new way, not only through training and thinking differently about our internal workforce, but how do we use the Challenges platform to engage citizen developers on the outside of government? How do we use our Presidential Innovation Fellows program to rotate in private sector people that have expertise to tackle some of the tough challenges in front of us? And so we're doing all of this to think about innovation in a much broader way, and people are at the center of that. Unleashing the power of government data, we are sitting on a treasure trove of data inside the federal government. There are entire industries that are created on top of government data. Weather and GPS is two historical examples that have been wildly successful. And we're now at the tipping point, I think, where we are going to be opening up government data in a way that really fosters innovation, entrepreneurship, and jobs. I think if you go to your favorite web browser and type in, go to Google, for example, and type in aspirin or ibuprofen or the name of some other medical drug, hit enter, and what you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's now metadata returned about those medications, all sourced to .gov websites. There are apps being created, jobs being created, and everything in between, built on government data in a pretty profound way. And then transforming government into a platform for innovation is another key. The essence there is really changing the way we buy, changing the way we build, changing the way we collect data, use data, and disseminate data, all throughout to think about how are we creating an ecosystem within government that combines people, technology, and smart governance to really change the government all up and create this platform for innovation. Next slide. So some of the key fundamentals here is one is the digital government strategy. So we launched this strategy back in May 2012. Todd Park and I, along with the president, announced the digital government strategy with a bunch of concrete milestones that are delivery vehicles against this throughout this year up until this coming May. It won't stop there. I mean, this is just about shocking the system and lighting a fire where we really need to focus our energy. Some of the fundamentals of this strategy are, one, open data, setting open data as the new default. If you think about the use of forms, the use of PDFs online, the disparity in our very proprietary approaches to using data, this document and this direction will actually produce policy that will set open data in a preference towards non-proprietary ways as the new default. So the way we collect, the way we use, and the way we disseminate data, even secure and private data, which will remain secure and private, will be done in a way that is open, that is machine readable, that you can program around and build systems and ecosystems around. Anytime, anywhere, on any device is another key tenet. I think we're not very far from a future where you're taking your mobile device and just docking it on your desk and using that as a desktop experience with a keyboard and mouse and larger monitor. I like to think about this line as just being screen size agnostic. We have to design a federal government that is not only customer centric but built in a way that can be just accessed anywhere. So the key fundamentals here are just device agnostic app development, screen size agnostic app development, regressive websites. All of this sort of stuff is coming out of the digital strategy. Everything should be an API, and the key there is is thinking about as we release data, as we publish systems, as we build solutions inside government, building those for machine readability and connectability through application programming interfaces is essential. You know, I laid down when I was running the operations at the Federal Communications Commission, I laid down the mandate that any data we collected, used, or disseminated had to be done in an open data source, and any software solution we solved needed to be an API. And if you go to the FCC's website and actually want to reference content on the website, you can now do that through an API. If you want to get to the licensing system on the back end, you can now do that through an API. And all of that is an important motion, and what we learned by doing that is that when you did the follow-on solutions, when you wanted to build a new experience that used some of the web content, you wanted to build a licensing solution, it was much orders of magnitude easier to do it that way when you had APIs waiting for you to connect those. And so really thinking about the keys of reusability and all of that is important. You know, in the government, on the outside the government and inside the government use of data, making it social is a key component. And I think in 2013 you're going to see some changes to data.gov and other places that start to embrace building communities around our data, to think about how do we create custom views into that data and usability of that data in a way that can really not only improve operations inside government, but help us on the outside as well. And then the last point, which I've made already, is government as a platform. Thinking about this reusability across government, do once, use often, is a key component of something we want to do. You know, one of the examples of this is I was meeting with some people in the Center for Medicare in our Health and Human Services Department, and working on some medical insurance technology, and they were wanting to build an income verifier to go in and say, if you have a certain income, you can get a certain insurance level off your medical insurance. And so they were talking to me about how they were working with IRS, and they were doing open data and APIs and all the smart things, modular approach that you want to do this. And they were building this new module that was going to go out and in a secure and very respectful of privacy way, go check income when a citizen opts in to do that, return that to the system, and then you can do an income-based insurance calculation. Well, about 3 weeks later, I was meeting with the Department of Education, their federal student aid group, who was talking to me about income-based repayment of student loans and how they were updating their website and doing some new technology. And they went on about how they were building an income verifier, working with IRS to build a modular open data solution to calculate a student's income and be able to allow a student to repay their student loans based on their income. And they were, I think, working with a different group within IRS to actually go build this. And you know, just that simple connection to say, if you've done that in API, you've done that through open data, you've now got that module. Both groups can use the same thing. Don't redo the work, just use the one that's already been created. And that sounds like such a simple notion. And many of you coming from the private sector, your businesses do this today. And you know, when I was building software at Microsoft, it would have been unthinkable to go and rebuild things from scratch. You just used components from around modules from around the company to assemble them in a solution, a unique solution. And so getting that to happen inside government is part of the not only making it social so people can understand what's out there that I can use, but building it in a way that promotes this reusability and modularity is a key. 2 websites down below is the DigitalGov strategy, if you want to check the milestones there and see the strategy itself, or if you're a geek like me and want to look at the regressive HTML5 version, that's up there too. Next slide. Cloud is also, I know this conference is centered around cloud computing. I wanted to kind of set the stage for everyone around some of our innovation, because I think cloud is just a component of this broader strategy, but an important part of our overall formula we're driving for. It is really viewed inside my office and inside the White House as really an engine of innovation. It's going to allow us to do more with less by driving scale efficiencies and thinking about not only driving down cost, but also sharing in the intellect that can be applied across a scaled system, both with the private sector and I think inside government, and provide incredible flexibility, use on demand. This is all stuff that you guys could all talk about ad nauseum, I'm sure. The two things I will focus on are one is a lot of conversations happen inside the federal government around the security of cloud. Is cloud secure? Is it going to provide me the security that I would have on premise? And the two things I say about that are, one, you're misguided if you think that your on-premise system is secure to a level at which it needs to be secure without proper governance and management of those systems. People ask me, what's the best way to secure my data center? I'll say it's easy, just unplug it from the network. Everything's connected. And so the fact that your data center sitting there connected to the network, puts you on par with any cloud provider and doesn't eliminate the necessity to go and think about security in everything that you do. And to that, one of the things the federal government was really doing was approaching cloud vendors in a very disparate way, where every agency within government who's wanting to acquire cloud, when we did our cloud first strategy, was going and kind of doing that on a one-off basis. Different sets of requirements for each procurement that was heading out to the vendor community, and we saw that as a huge inhibitor. Both on the side of with that disparity comes higher costs and higher burden to the vendors, and to the agencies. It wasn't giving them a predictable way to say, okay, I think I'm secure, or I'm secure at a certain level. And so to that end, we launched FedRAMP. And FedRAMP is the Federal Risk Authorization and Management Program, which basically gives agencies a predictable way of procuring secure cloud across many axes and many levels. It prescribes a bunch of security controls that the vendor community need to satisfy to meet our cloud guidelines, and gives them a very predictable way. And the thing I'm most encouraged by is when I meet with many of the cloud providers out there, they now tell me, or at least they present to me their cloud strategy, and it matches FedRAMP very closely. And so we're creating a really, I think, a great two-way partnership on cloud computing and the approaches, predictable approaches we can acquire with cloud. Now, the way FedRAMP works is, FedRAMP is sort of like a requirements funnel. We pour vendors into the top that work through the requirements to make sure that they satisfy those requirements, and then they come out the other end of it ready to do business with the federal government. And we want to create a pipeline that actually eliminates a lot of the requirements gathering for the government to not only save the government money, but also allow this predictability. We launched FedRAMP, or I launched FedRAMP last winter, about a year ago. June, we were first operational, so what that meant is the doors were open for vendors to come in to the top of the funnel, and right now we're starting to clear vendors through the funnel. We have, in the last 2 weeks, we have 2 vendors, this is just happening in real time, 2 vendors that went through and are now certified to work with government through the FedRAMP program, and we have over 70 that are right behind them in the pipeline. So we're going to, I think in very rapid fashion, you're going to see those numbers tick up. Since we just had the 2 in the last couple of weeks, you're going to see that kind of cadence happening on a pretty regular basis and working through here. Next slide. So the formula here, in contrast to where we were in the past, the keys are one, that we're thinking about cloud, and we're building solutions in this customer-centric way, thinking about the outside in versus the inside out. How am I thinking about my department-wide solutions? How am I thinking about government-wide solutions based on the things we're doing? We're building those solutions in a reusable, modular way that are built so I can take that module and I can reuse it across government. The other benefit of the modular approach is, we can all tell the story of knowing some project that was originally scoped to be a big monolithic 5-year, $100 million project that ended up 10 years later costing $500 million and was probably scrapped after 10 years because the technology was out of date, or the people who were managing the process are all gone, or laws changed that affect the technology, or things like that. The tolerance of risk, something that's essential to the private sector, is really kind of missing in the federal government, largely because of these giant monolithic solutions. The fact that we have, nobody wants to be the person managing the project that fails that costs $500 million. And you always ask yourself, if you're playing football, how many quarterbacks do you know can throw the 80-yard pass down and hit a target precisely, in the end zone there's probably, you know, a couple quarterbacks that can actually do that. And you ask how many quarterbacks do you have that in the NFL that can hit the 4-yard pass, someone running across the middle? Well, everyone can kind of do that. You know, if you think about that risk surface and that elite nature of being able to hit that target downfield, you know, we have a lot of project managers and program managers inside the federal government that can hit the 4-yard pass, that can take a small module and think about, okay, how am I going to build that module in a way that can be effective? And the risk surface is so much lower. If a small module fails, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't compromise the whole project. You can do it quickly, you can deliver customer value, you can do it in a way that if you fail, you're probably going to learn from it and do better the next time in a way that doesn't cost a lot of money and present a lot of risk. And so we want to, you know, break these big solutions down, think about the biggest solutions within government, and break them down into 4-yard passes versus the long ball. Think about how we're going to get those project managers and program managers inside government to deliver those reusable modules, build a social nature around those so people know what they are, how to use them, and how to build within them, and get that happening in a way that is built around non-proprietary solutions, non-proprietary open data in a way that can be reused in a very easy way, and importantly, built for any device. You know, the presentation part of it should be built in a way that works on mobile, works on desktop, works anywhere you need it to go. And then the other essential formula is that's on the build side. The deploy side is really thinking about a services approach via the cloud. I think the most advanced companies out there and the way that some agencies are starting to approach this is really not thinking about solutions, but thinking about services. So instead of somebody coming from the far corner of your agency and coming up to you and saying, I need to build, you know, XYZ mission solution, I need a product to go do this, they'll say, I need a product to do this on this kind of environment. And you'll say, great, here's a development environment as a service, here's a test environment as a service, here's a deployment environment as a service, and wire it this way because I've got business intelligence as a service, and I want to be able to understand that as well. And so that services approach, I think, inherently lends itself to a cloud approach because of the cost and flexibility and economies of scale, but also gets you this level of once I build on the services platform, I snap to the enterprise architecture, I snap to our security guidelines, I snap to a development environment, and probably metadata structures and APIs and everything else that just will fit and seamlessly work within my environment. And so it's a key and essential part of it. And cloud computing really holds an opportunity for us in a way that can really drive this 21st century government. Next slide. And so at the end of this, you know, I think what I would love to see in the way we, you know, deploy, procure, buy, use everything inside government is really centered around, you know, the thinking that we need to do things. We need to break the monolithic down to modular. We need to really focus on massive social cross-government reuse of our technology. I think there will be places where we'll want to set up lines of business. We've already had some success there, and I think there could be more success on the mission side. Open by default. That doesn't necessarily mean open source. It just means open data, open use, non-proprietary on the interconnect standpoint. You know, really focusing on not just large vendors, but also creating opportunity for small vendors, small agile vendors to come in and work within the federal government and develop solutions there. I think all of this will equate to a lower cost. And the funny thing on low cost is even working with the vendor community, I think it lowers the vendors' costs as well in the way you work with the federal government and think about that connection. I think there's an opportunity here to really get win-win on the way we drive this forward. You know, we're still, as a federal government, you know, kind of on the majority side, thinking about technology kind of in this very discretionary way. You know, it's the ability to print, it's the ability to check your email, it's the ability to, you know, save a document to a share or something like that. Where the private sector in the last decade has really flipped over that inflection point to think about technology as this way of really strategically engaging my customers, building better products, marketing my products, all of that. And when we start to build in these modular ways and have massive scale around those modular approaches, the federal government will sort of flip over that inflection point where technology will be a strategic asset. And I think there holds a lot of opportunity for vendors of all sizes to work with government in a much different way to really drive a different paradigm. We have an imperative to also be customer-centric. A lot of what we're doing in our Presidential Innovation Fellows program, Business USA, to do a business-centric approach, our website consolidation work, all of that is centered around how do we be more customer-centric in the way we build solutions inside government for any device and cloud by default. So next slide. My call to action for all of you is if you're in the federal community, take all of this to heart. Think about every day when I wake up, how am I doing things in a way that it's going to lower risk surface, it's going to build in these modular approaches that will drive this paradigm in a new way. Open data policy is forthcoming, and some of the other deliverables in the digital government strategy are forthcoming in a way that are really going to change the game in the way we think about mobile, the way we think about data inside our agencies, and we want to encourage the federal government to get a running start at all of this and take it forward and to reference that. If you're on the vendor community, help us think about how you build solutions inside your companies, bringing that to bear inside the federal landscape. If there are agencies out there that propose to you the next 5-year, $100 million project, I want to know about it, and I want to think about how do we work together as a community to build these solutions in a way that can be deployed and managed in a reusable, agile approach. And with that, I want to thank you.